The queen mourned her missing daughter. Until a human returned with her alive, the stars had always shone brighter around the empire, a soft golden light that spread across entire systems like the warmth of a sun that never set. But now even those distant suns seemed dim, as if the galaxy itself mourned the loss of the princess. She had been the pride of her people, the daughter of the queen who had ruled for centuries with wisdom, power, and unmatched authority. Her disappearance had come without warning, leaving behind only whispers and unanswered questions. The princess's mission had been simple in theory: diplomacy, a bridge between empires that could secure peace for generations. But her ship never returned, and the empire had scoured every corner of nearby space, only to find silence. Officially, she was dead, though hope had never truly faded from the hearts of a few loyal aides. The queen did not mourn in private. Her grief was a public thing, a chilling presence felt in every hall of the empire. Statues of the princess were covered with veils of black silk, and starshells were lit in her honor, casting a pale glow across cities that normally sparkled with celebration. Yet the queen herself withdrew further from her people, her voice colder, her commands sharper. Council meetings were brief, her judgment harsh, and any dissenters quickly silenced. It was said that her sorrow had hardened her, that the absence of her daughter had carved a void in her heart that no law, no victory could ever fill. In the capital, the air was heavy with mourning, though few dared speak of it openly. Citizens moved quickly along the streets, eyes down, whispering only in the shadows. Merchants lowered prices out of respect, even when the cost of doing so was heavy. Soldiers patrolled the streets, not for protection, but to ensure that the grief remained orderly, contained, and unquestioned. This was the empire's way. Grief could be tolerated, but weakness could not. And yet, far beyond the reaches of imperial space, beyond patrol fleets and fortified starports, a single human was listening to a faint signal that no one else had noticed. The human was young, by galactic standards, but already seasoned by countless journeys into unexplored regions. His ship was small and unremarkable, a vessel that would have been dismissed by any experienced alien commander as incapable of surviving the dangers that lay ahead. Yet he trusted it more than any fleet, and he trusted himself even more than that. The signal was weak, almost imperceptible, a flicker of energy that pulsed through the void with a rhythm too deliberate to be natural. It was the kind of signal that suggested life, or at least, something that had once been alive. He adjusted the sensors and leaned closer, squinting through the soft glow of his ship's instruments. The energy signature matched nothing in the galactic records. Not a freighter, not a probe, not even the drifting wrecks left behind by old wars. It had to be a person or something remarkably intelligent. His heart quickened. This could be anything. It could be treasure, it could be danger, it could be a trap. But he had never been one to walk away from something that might matter, and this signal, it pulsed with a quiet urgency that called to him. Days passed as he plotted a course toward the signal. The journey took him into territories marked unexplored on every map, places even the boldest alien fleets avoided. Nebulae twisted like ribbons of flame, storms of radiation churned violently, and gravity wells threatened to pull his ship apart. Yet he persisted, making small adjustments, calculating angles, dodging debris fields, and carefully rationing supplies. The human had learned early that survival depended not on strength alone, but on patience, on the ability to see opportunities where others saw obstacles. Finally, he arrived at a region of space that defied description. Wreckage floated in every direction, the remnants of countless vessels scattered like fallen leaves. Some were ancient, unrecognizable, carved with glyphs from civilizations long extinct. Others were recent, twisted metal and scorched hulls that still smelled faintly of ozone and fuel. And in the middle of it all, almost hidden by the wreckage, was the signal's source, the princess's ship. It was battered, broken, and half-buried in the debris of what had once been a thriving trade route. Its hull was scarred by collision and weapons fire, and small fires still burned in places where no life could survive. From the outside, it seemed hopeless. No one could have survived this, and yet the signal persisted, faint but steady, like a heartbeat refusing to fade. The human docked carefully, scanning the vessel for life signs. There were a few. Only one of them registered as fully human-compatible, the princess herself. She was alive. He could feel it before the sensors confirmed it. There was something unmistakably strong in her, even in her weakened state. Her vitals were low but steady. She had survived years in isolation, protected from whatever had claimed the others, perhaps through luck, perhaps through sheer will. Either way, she had endured. When he breached the hull, the princess did not look like royalty. She was gaunt, her once regal posture weakened, her eyes wary and calculating. Every movement suggested caution, distrust, and fear. She did not immediately speak. She watched him, measuring him, assessing whether he was a threat or another predator in a galaxy that had shown her nothing but cruelty. He approached slowly, speaking in a calm voice, explaining who he was and why he had come. He offered no weapons, no grand promises, only assistance. The first moments were tense. She did not move. She did not respond. But then slowly she allowed herself to be guided to safety, to the small medical bay he had prepared on his ship. There she could rest without immediate danger, though she did not sleep. The human worked tirelessly, using every skill he had learned from years of improvisation. He treated injuries, repaired systems, and built makeshift defenses against the dangers that might still roam the wreckage-strewn sector. In the silence of the medical bay, the princess finally spoke. Her voice was soft but measured, not the commanding tone of a royal, but the cautious one of someone who had survived far too much to trust easily. She asked questions, not of him, but of the world, of why he was here, of why anyone would care. He answered honestly, telling her about humanity's curiosity, its persistence, its refusal to leave others behind. She listened with skepticism, but also with the faintest flicker of something she had almost forgotten: hope. Days turned into weeks as they navigated the dangerous region together. They scavenged supplies from wrecked ships, avoided deadly storms of cosmic radiation, and evaded creatures that thrived in the void. Slowly, a bond formed, not of friendship, but of mutual reliance. The princess learned to respect the human's instincts, his ingenuity, and his relentless courage. He learned to understand her strengths and vulnerabilities, and the subtle ways she thought and planned. In a galaxy that had taught her to trust no one, this human became an anomaly, a constant presence, a force of unexpected resilience. Yet danger was never far. Energy readings suggested that the Empire, in its grief, had begun to investigate faint anomalies in the region. Sensors aboard Imperial fleets were detecting small disturbances in space-time, barely noticeable but enough to spark suspicion. The Queen herself, in her grief-stricken rage, might dispatch forces to erase the region entirely, thinking the sector desecrated or compromised. The human knew that they were running out of time, and that survival depended not only on escaping the wreckage, but on reaching a place where the Empire could not harm them. Still, in the quiet moments between danger and survival, the princess allowed herself small glimpses of humanity she had never known. She marveled at how the human had patched a shield generator with scraps of metal and circuitry, how he had navigated through storms that would have destroyed any other ship, and how he persisted despite exhaustion. He did not boast, he did not demand recognition, and he never gave up. She realized slowly that humans were underestimated not because they were weak, but because they were unpredictable, adaptable, and capable of hope when all others had abandoned it. By the time they prepared to leave the sector, both were changed. The princess was no longer merely a survivor. She was someone who had learned that even in the depths of despair, courage and loyalty could carve a path forward. The human was no longer merely an explorer. He was a witness to the strength of a being who carried the weight of an empire's grief, yet refused to be broken. Together they formed an unlikely alliance, bound not by blood or empire, but by the raw necessity of survival, the quiet power of trust, and the spark of something greater: hope. And as they set course toward the uncharted stars beyond the wreckage, neither could predict what awaited them. The Empire's wrath, the mysteries of deep space, and the challenges of survival all loomed ahead. But for the first time in years, the princess felt alive, not merely in body, but in spirit. She had been saved not by the mightiest fleets, not by the most advanced technology, but by a human who refused to walk away. In that moment, amid the cold brilliance of the stars and the hum of a repaired ship, a quiet truth settled between them. In a galaxy that had dismissed humanity as insignificant, the human had proven something no one else had: the ability to change destinies, to defy expectations, and to bring back life where all had been lost. The human steered the small ship carefully through the wreckage-strewn sector, every movement deliberate, every sensor reading scrutinized. He knew the princess's life depended not only on speed, but on precision. The remnants of old battles and derelict vessels floated like silent witnesses to centuries of galactic conflict. Some were jagged fragments of starships, others were entire hulls half buried in the drifting fields of cosmic debris. Navigation was treacherous. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the ship could tear apart, leaving both of them stranded, or worse. The princess sat quietly, watching the human at work. She no longer doubted his intentions, though trust was still fragile, like a thread stretched across a storm. Her eyes traced his hands as they manipulated the controls with practiced ease. She had been trained in diplomacy, in leadership, in strategy, but she had never seen anything like this. Humans were unpredictable. They adapted, improvised, and persisted in ways that no imperial intelligence could anticipate. She realized slowly that she had underestimated them, not in power but in resolve. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly, her voice almost lost in the hum of the ship's engines. "You could leave, you could save yourself." The human glanced at her, expression calm but firm. "I don't leave people behind, that's all there is to it. You didn't ask to be here and I didn't ask for this, but now that we're here, we deal with it together." She studied him carefully. There was no arrogance in his words, no hint of ulterior motive. Just an unwavering determination. It was a quality alien empires rarely saw, and one she had never expected from a human. The more she watched, the more she understood why the human species had survived despite being weaker, slower, and less technologically advanced than almost every other race. Their strength was not in their ships or weapons. It was in their willpower, in their refusal to give up. For days they moved cautiously through the sector. The human patched small damages to the ship as they went, scavenging materials from derelict vessels. He jury-rigged repairs to the navigation system, reinforced the hull with scraps of metal, and even managed to improvise a rudimentary shield that could deflect minor debris impacts. Each task he completed reminded the princess that humans were not merely survivors. They were problem solvers, capable of ingenuity under pressure. Yet danger was never far away. The wreckage fields were home to predators that had evolved to hunt intelligent beings. Creatures with hard exoskeletons and razor-sharp limbs stalked the void, drawn to the faint life signals that the princess's ship emitted. The human had anticipated some of the threats, but not all. One night, as the ship drifted near a massive debris cluster, a creature lunged at the hull. Alarms blared as the impact shook the vessel. The princess froze, fear gripping her chest. She had seen death too closely already, and the sight of the human moving calmly, using nothing but skill and quick thinking to divert the predator, left her both awed and frightened. "You could have been killed," she said once the danger passed. Her voice trembled, though she tried to keep it steady. "Why do you risk yourself like this?" The human shrugged, checking the shields and sensors. "Because leaving you here isn't an option. You survive, we survive. That's all that matters." It was a simple answer, but it carried weight the princess could feel deep inside her. In a galaxy that had taught her to fear everyone and trust no one, this human had given her something she hadn't felt in years: certainty. For the first time since her disappearance, she could imagine being rescued, being returned home. Despite the dangers, they found moments of reprieve. Floating near an abandoned space station, the human managed to scavenge clean water and rations, enough to last them for several days. The princess helped, her pride fighting against her necessity. She had never done manual labor in her life, and yet, for the first time, she found satisfaction in contributing directly to her survival. She learned quickly, guided by the human's patient instructions. Together, they repaired parts of the ship's engine and even built a small communication array to test for any distant signals of assistance. And then came the first warning. The human noticed subtle distortions in the energy readings around the sector. Tiny spikes of detection, almost imperceptible but significant enough to suggest they were not entirely alone. He explained to the princess that these readings could only come from highly advanced sensors likely connected to her empire. The realization hit her like a cold wind. The queen might be searching, but the empire had no knowledge of her current location. Worse, if they found the sector without knowing her exact situation, they could destroy everything in a blind attempt to erase what they thought were anomalies or threats. "We need to leave," he said firmly, plotting a new course. If the Empire sends ships here, it won't matter that you're alive. They'll see nothing but strange readings, and their response will be extreme. The princess felt a mixture of fear and frustration. They might destroy the very place that kept me alive. They might kill anyone who tries to help me. Yes, he replied, but if we wait, we risk staying here until it's too late. We leave now or we stay and gamble with everything. She nodded, understanding the truth in his words. There was no time for hesitation. Survival demanded action. As they accelerated into the emptiness beyond the wreckage fields, they encountered another challenge. An unstable star system blocked their path, a sun with violent flares that erupted unpredictably, throwing off gravitational patterns. The human guided the ship through with precision, calculating angles and speeds with instincts honed from years of navigating dangerous space. The princess watched in awe, her respect for him growing with every maneuver. Each flare that passed harmlessly reminded her that humans did not rely solely on strength. They relied on intelligence, adaptability, and courage. During moments of quiet, the princess shared fragments of her past, stories of court intrigue, diplomacy, and expectations placed on her since childhood. The human listened, asking questions that showed genuine interest but never judgment. He spoke of human lives, of survival in harsh conditions on their home planet, and of small victories that mattered more than power or prestige. Each conversation built understanding, each story exchanged forming a bridge between two species separated by culture, expectation, and history. Yet, as the weeks passed, the princess noticed a change in herself. She no longer only feared for her life, she began to anticipate a future. She imagined returning home, speaking to her mother, seeing the empire that had mourned her for years. She also imagined introducing the human to her people, though that idea was tentative only because she doubted the empire's willingness to accept a species they had long underestimated. Still, the hope was there, fragile but growing stronger with each day of survival. Danger remained constant. Small asteroids collided with the ship, engines overworked and systems pushed to their limits. The human faced each obstacle with calm determination, never allowing despair to enter his mind. He scavenged from derelict ships, repaired damages with ingenuity, and used knowledge of physics and improvisation to ensure their survival. Each success reminded the princess that humans thrived where others would have perished, their strength hidden in resourcefulness rather than raw power. One night, as they rested near a dormant nebula, the princess asked the question that had haunted her. "Do you think my empire will forgive me for being gone so long?" The human looked at her, silent for a moment. "I don't know, but I do know this. You survived. That matters more than anything else right now. The rest, you'll handle when it comes. You're stronger than you think." She reflected on his words. For years, she had defined herself by her lineage, her rank, and the expectations of the empire. But here, in the middle of uncharted space, survival and courage mattered more than titles or politics. She realized that the human had taught her something she had never truly learned. That strength was not in commanding fleets or issuing decrees, but in enduring, adapting, and refusing to give up even when the universe itself seemed determined to crush you. Their journey continued, each day bringing new challenges and new lessons. They navigated treacherous asteroid belts, avoided energy storms that could fry the ship systems, and evaded predators that sensed their presence. They scavenged what they could, repaired what was broken, and survived where no one else would have lasted more than a few hours. Through it all, the princess began to see humans not as weak, primitive creatures, but as a species defined by determination, courage, and loyalty. In those long days of travel, a bond formed that was impossible to ignore. It was not romance, nor was it simple friendship. It was trust forged in the crucible of survival, a connection that transcended species, culture, and expectation. The princess learned that the human would not abandon her, no matter the danger. And the human, in turn, saw in her a spark that could not be extinguished, a will to survive that matched his own. Together, they were stronger than either could be alone. As the starfield stretched endlessly before them, the human plotted their next course carefully. They were leaving the sector, moving toward a region less traveled by Imperial fleets, but danger would follow. Every light year brought new unknowns, and the Empire's shadow grew closer with each passing moment. Yet, despite the fear and uncertainty, both of them felt a quiet confidence. Together, they could survive. They could endure. They could outlast anything the galaxy threw at them. And as they moved toward the uncharted stars, the princess allowed herself, for the first time in years, to hope. She was alive. She was no longer alone. And somewhere deep within, she began to believe that survival was only the beginning, that perhaps, with the human by her side, the impossible might be possible. The journey through uncharted space had become a test of endurance and will. Each day brought new challenges, new threats, and new lessons in survival. The princess had long since shed the illusion of safety. Her life had been confined to palaces, halls of diplomacy, and the illusion of power. Yet now she moved through the void in the company of a human whose courage and ingenuity were unmatched. She had learned quickly that in this vast, indifferent galaxy, intelligence and determination mattered more than rank or heritage. The human, despite his small ship and limited technology, seemed capable of surviving anything the universe threw at him. They had left the wreckage sector far behind, moving toward a quieter part of space where imperial fleets rarely ventured. Yet the Empire's influence stretched farther than anyone realized. Small probes, remnants of ancient monitoring networks, and occasional scouts whispered warnings through the void. The human noticed anomalies in energy readings, subtle distortions that suggested they were not entirely unobserved. He studied each fluctuation with patience, recalculating their path to avoid detection. The princess watched him, understanding slowly why humans survived when other species failed. They did not rely on brute strength or sheer firepower. They relied on observation, adaptability, and intuition, the ability to respond to danger before it became inevitable. Survival became their daily ritual. The humans scavenged supplies from derelict vessels, repaired the ship with ingenuity, and monitored life support systems with meticulous care. The princess assisted where she could, though her skill set was ill-suited for mechanical work. She learned quickly, however, guided by the humans' patient instructions, and discovered that even small contributions mattered. It was a lesson in humility, one that reshaped her understanding of strength. Power was not in commanding others. It was in enduring, in adapting, and in refusing to surrender even when the odds seemed insurmountable. One evening, as they drifted near a cluster of blackened asteroids, the princess finally asked the question that had haunted her for weeks. "Do you think my empire will ever understand what I've endured?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with doubt. The human paused, eyes on the navigation display, fingers adjusting controls with precision. "They may never understand," he said honestly. "But they will see the result. You survived, you're alive. That alone proves more than any explanation." She studied him, weighing his words. In all her years of training and education, she had never encountered a being so unflinching in the face of danger, so certain in his purpose. He did not hesitate. He did not doubt. He simply acted with focus and determination. And through his example, she began to see the truth about humans. They were not the strongest species, nor the most technologically advanced, but they endured. They adapted. They refused to abandon one another even when the cost was great. Days passed in a blur of activity. The human repaired systems, scavenged what they could, and calculated the safest routes through hazardous space. The princess observed him, noting the quiet patience with which he approached every problem. One day, a sudden gravitational anomaly sent the ship spinning toward a cluster of floating debris. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the hull groaned under stress. The human acted instantly, adjusting thrusters, rerouting power, and stabilizing the vessel with calm precision. The princess felt her heart pound in her chest, awe and fear mingling as she realized that without him they would have perished. "You are remarkable," she admitted quietly once the danger passed. He shook his head, focusing on diagnostics. "I just do what's necessary." That's all anyone can do. His humility only deepened her respect. The galaxy had taught her to measure worth by titles, lineage, and power, yet here was proof that true value could not be defined by status. It was measured by courage, by ingenuity, by the refusal to give up in the face of impossible odds. Humans, she realized, were underestimated at every turn. Their strength was not in ships or weapons. It was in will, in persistence, and in loyalty. The nights were often quiet, filled with the soft hum of engines and the distant glow of stars. In these moments, the princess allowed herself to think, to reflect on the life she had lost and the life she might regain. She spoke little of politics or diplomacy, instead sharing fragments of herself, stories of her childhood and memories of her mother. The human listened, asking questions not out of curiosity alone, but from genuine interest, from a desire to understand her as a person, not as a symbol of an empire. It was during one such quiet night that they detected an approaching fleet on distant sensors. The human's expression grew serious. "Imperial ships," he said, scanning the readings. "They're not far. If they come this way, it could get dangerous quickly." The princess felt a surge of fear, but it was tempered by a new sense of resolve. She had faced danger before in the quiet corridors of power, but nothing compared to the vastness of space and the unpredictability of the human's ingenuity. "We cannot let them catch us," she said firmly. "No," the human agreed. "We need to stay ahead and stay clever. They might have numbers, but we have adaptability. We can outthink them, outmaneuver them, and survive." As they plotted a new course, the human shared details about the empire that the princess had never considered. He spoke of human colonies, of societies built on collaboration, trust, and resilience. He explained how humans had survived harsh planets, limited resources, and countless adversities that would have destroyed other civilizations. The princess listened, struck by the stark contrast between her empire's reliance on dominance and hierarchy and the human emphasis on cooperation and endurance. The following days were tense. The fleet that had been detected was moving faster than expected, and sensors indicated that they were deploying advanced scanning technology capable of detecting small life signatures. The human worked tirelessly, making adjustments to the ship's shields, rerouting power, and employing tactics that relied on deception rather than force. The princess watched him, realizing that survival was an art form in the hands of someone who refused to accept defeat. One evening, while navigating a field of unstable asteroids, they encountered a predator unlike any they had seen before. It was massive, with armored plating and sensory organs that glowed faintly in the dark. The creature lunged at the ship, colliding with the hull and sending shockwaves through the control room. The human reacted instantly, using precise calculations and the ship's limited weaponry to repel the attack. The princess held on tightly, fear and admiration mixing as she witnessed the human's courage and skill. When the predator finally retreated, the human turned to her with a faint smile. "See, nothing we can't handle." She shook her head, all written across her face. "You risked everything, again," he shrugged. "It's not about risking everything, it's about surviving, that's all we can do." In the following days, they made careful progress, moving through nebulas and asteroid belts, scavenging what they could and repairing damages as they went. Each day, the princess learned more about the human way of thinking, about resilience, resourcefulness, and the quiet power of endurance. She began to see herself not only as a princess, but as a survivor, someone capable of adapting, learning, and thriving under conditions that would have broken others. Then came the first real test of trust. Sensors detected a small vessel approaching from the shadows, its design unfamiliar. The human prepared for confrontation, but the princess recognized markings that suggested a rogue faction of her empire. They were not here to rescue or negotiate. They sought only to capture or eliminate. The human assessed the situation quickly, calculating probabilities, predicting movements, and preparing countermeasures. The princess realized in that moment that his intelligence was not measured by knowledge alone, but by an instinctive understanding of survival. The encounter was brief but intense. The rogue vessel attempted to block their path, firing energy pulses that struck the ship's shields. The human maneuvered with precision, using the environment to their advantage, and outflanked the attackers. In the end, the rogue vessel retreated, damaged but alive. The princess felt a surge of relief, tempered by admiration. Humans, she realized, were not only capable of surviving, they were capable of triumphing against overwhelming odds. As they continued, the princess reflected on the lessons she had learned. Power was not measured by armies or technology, but by courage, ingenuity, and the willingness to act when others faltered. The human had demonstrated all these qualities in abundance, showing her a side of the galaxy she had never truly understood. She began to see humanity not as a primitive species, but as a force of endurance, adaptability, and quiet heroism. The journey through uncharted space was far from over. Imperial forces continued to close in, the galaxy remained indifferent to their survival, and dangers lurked in every shadow. Yet the princess no longer felt helpless. She had learned to trust, to adapt, and to endure. And she had learned that the human beside her embodied qualities that even the greatest empires could not ignore: courage, loyalty, and the determination to survive against impossible odds. By the time they reached the edge of the uncharted sector, the princess felt a quiet confidence she had not known in years. The human had shown her a truth that no palace, no court, and no fleet could teach: that survival, courage, and hope were more powerful than lineage, technology, or titles. And as they set a new course toward regions unknown, both knew that the challenges ahead would test them further, but also that together, they had proven that humanity could defy expectations, outthink danger, and endure where others would fail. In the cold light of distant stars, the princess allowed herself a small smile. She had survived not because of the empire, not because of fleets or technology, but because of a human who refused to give up, who refused to abandon her, and who demonstrated the quiet, unstoppable power of determination. For the first time in years, she truly believed that survival was only the beginning, and that the impossible might yet become possible. The distant stars stretched endlessly before them, but their beauty offered no comfort. The princess sat silently at the ship's observation window, watching streaks of light from nearby systems. The galaxy, vast and indifferent, held dangers that no fleet or palace could control. Yet she felt something she had not felt in years: anticipation. Survival was no longer just a hope. It was a possibility, tangible and within reach. The human at the helm moved with calm precision, eyes scanning instruments, hands adjusting controls, and mind always calculating the next step. He had become the steady center of her world, the force that had carried her through death and uncertainty. The human's instincts proved invaluable as they approached the edge of imperial space. The sensors began to pick up anomalies, fleeting, subtle, but unmistakable. Small patrols, scouting probes, even distant energy signatures hinted that the Empire was aware of their movement. The princess felt a pang of fear. Her mother, the queen, had ruled for centuries with authority and power unmatched. If the Empire discovered her alive in this sector, the consequences could be catastrophic. Ships could be deployed, entire regions quarantined, and no consideration given to her survival. The human noticed her concern immediately. "We'll be careful," he said, voice calm but firm. "We avoid their main routes and we stay in shadows when we can. You have survived this far, don't let fear undo that." She nodded, drawing strength from his confidence. She had learned that fear could paralyze, but action, even small, deliberate action, could overcome it. She realized that the human had taught her the greatest lesson of all. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let it dictate decisions. As they moved closer to Imperial space, a warning light flashed on the console. The human's eyes narrowed. "They're closing in faster than I expected," he said, analyzing the readings. "It's not just scouts. They're deploying full reconnaissance. If we don't act, they'll find us." The princess felt her pulse quicken. She had never experienced such urgency, such immediacy of danger. Yet she did not panic. She had survived horrors the Empire could never imagine, and the human had shown her that quick thinking, strategy, and persistence could overcome even the most daunting threats. The human altered their course, plotting a path that wove through nebulae and asteroid belts. The dense clouds of gas offered cover from sensors, while the twisting paths of the debris fields created natural obstacles. Every maneuver required precision, every calculation mattered. The princess watched him, marveling at the instinctive brilliance that humans possessed. In a galaxy that prized overwhelming force, he relied on intellect, adaptation, and an unyielding determination. The first confrontation came sooner than expected. A fleet of scout ships emerged from the void, their hulls gleaming with the insignia of the Empire. The human acted instantly, guiding the ship through a dense asteroid field, weaving between massive rocks, and using the terrain to mask their presence. The scouts fired, energy blasts streaking past, some striking debris that exploded in showers of molten metal. The princess gripped the railing, heart racing, and realized how fragile their survival truly was. Yet the human remained calm, adjusting shields, rerouting power, and even improvising weapons from scavenged materials. Every shot deflected, every obstacle navigated, proved the adaptability that defined humans. They were not the strongest, nor the most technologically advanced, but they could endure, improvise, and outthink almost any adversary. Once the fleet was behind them, the human allowed himself a brief sigh of relief. That was close, he admitted, though there was no fear in his voice, only focus on the next step. The princess studied him. "How do you do it?" she asked. "How can you stay so calm when everything is against us?" He shrugged. "You learn to focus on what you can control, not what you can't. Panic doesn't help. Planning does. Adaptation does. That's how humans survive." She nodded, absorbing the lesson. Her empire had always relied on rigid strategy, overwhelming firepower, and hierarchy. Humans, she realized, thrived in uncertainty. They adapted, improvised, and persevered. Their strength was in their mind, in their resilience, and in their refusal to abandon what mattered. As they moved deeper into the edge of imperial space, the human detected another anomaly, something he had not anticipated. A massive energy field stretched across a sector, its nature unfamiliar, its purpose unknown. The ship's sensors picked up faint life signs, including her own. The princess's heart sank. She recognized the danger immediately. If the Empire traced these energy fluctuations, they would find her, and they would not hesitate to destroy anything in their path. "We have to be clever," he said, analyzing the readings. "We can't go around, we need to move through undetected and fast." The passage through the energy field was tense. The ship's shields strained against the fluctuating forces, systems overloaded, and every maneuver demanded precision. The princess assisted where she could, monitoring instruments and relaying information. Together, they moved through the hazard, surviving bursts of energy that would have destroyed most vessels. Each second was a test of skill, intellect, and courage, and the human's steady focus ensured that they made it through unscathed. Once past the energy field, the princess allowed herself a small moment of relief. "We survived," she whispered, voice tinged with awe, "and I'm beginning to understand humans truly are remarkable." The human glanced at her, expression neutral. "We survive. That's all there is to it. The rest comes after." Their journey continued, moving toward a sector less traveled by the Empire. The princess began to appreciate the lessons she had learned from him. Power alone could not save lives, nor could authority or lineage. Survival required courage, ingenuity, and trust. She had relied on others before, but now she understood that true survival depended on partnership, collaboration, and the ability to adapt. Days later, they detected a faint transmission. It was not from the Empire, but from a distant human colony. The human's eyes lit up. "This is good," he said. "We might find supplies, repairs, and assistance. We're not out of danger yet, but it's a chance." The princess listened, realizing how unfamiliar this feeling was. She had always depended on imperial resources, the authority of her mother, and the strength of fleets. Now, in uncharted space, she depended on a human, his knowledge, and his resilience. She understood that she had underestimated the species, and in doing so had overlooked a force capable of changing destinies. Yet danger was not absent. Imperial scouts continued to track faint energy readings, and the princess knew that the queen herself would soon realize that her daughter might be alive. The thought was terrifying. The Empire would not pause to consider her survival. They would strike, perhaps without hesitation, to eliminate what they perceived as a threat or anomaly. The human prepared for the worst, reinforcing the ship, adjusting shields, and planning escape routes. He explained the importance of strategy, improvisation, and thinking several steps ahead. The princess observed, absorbing the lessons, realizing that her survival, and perhaps the survival of humanity in her perception, depended on these qualities. The human had shown her that adaptability, courage, and intellect could overcome even the most powerful empire. In the quiet moments, the princess began to reflect on the nature of humanity. The species was underestimated across the galaxy, dismissed as primitive, weak, and inconsequential. Yet here in uncharted space, humans displayed qualities unmatched by even the most technologically advanced civilizations: endurance, ingenuity, and an unyielding sense of loyalty. The human before her was not exceptional by chance. He embodied the best of what his species offered. Finally, after weeks of careful travel, they approached the boundary of a distant, less monitored region. The human calculated the safest path, using every bit of knowledge, skill, and intuition he possessed. The princess observed, noting how every decision relied not on force, but on intellect, patience, and careful calculation. She realized that this was humanity's greatest advantage. They were unpredictable, adaptable, and capable of surviving when all others would fail. As they crossed into safer space, the princess allowed herself a rare smile. "We made it," she said quietly. The human nodded, eyes scanning the stars ahead. "For now," he replied, "but the Empire won't give up. They'll continue searching, and we need to be ready for the next challenge." The princess felt a surge of gratitude and respect. She had learned that survival was not about who ruled, who commanded fleets, or who possessed the most advanced technology. Survival was about courage, adaptability, and the refusal to abandon what mattered. The human had demonstrated all these qualities and more. He had saved her life, protected her, and shown her the quiet, unstoppable power of determination. In that moment, she understood something profound. Humanity, though underestimated, possessed the ability to alter destinies, to defy expectations, and to endure where other species might fail. And as the distant stars stretched endlessly before them, she realized that the greatest challenge had not yet arrived. But with this human by her side, she had hope, and hope was stronger than any fleet, any weapon, or any empire. The human guided the ship carefully through the edge of Imperial space, every system checked, every sensor monitored, every calculation precise. The princess watched the distant stars with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. For years, she had imagined this moment in endless daydreams, the return to her home, the reunion with her mother, and the restoration of her place in the empire. Yet now, as the capital loomed ahead, she realized the challenge would be greater than she had imagined. The queen had mourned her death for years. Her anger, grief, and pride were formidable, and the empire itself would not accept explanations easily. "Are you ready?" the human asked quietly, his voice calm but firm. He had navigated them through dangers that would have claimed almost anyone else. He had protected her from predators, storms, and enemies alike. Yet the return posed a new type of danger, one no survival instinct alone could prepare them for. "I am," she said, though her voice betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. "But the Empire, my mother, I do not know how she will react." The human gave her a reassuring look. "Then we will face it together. You are alive, you are here, that is what matters." They approached the capital slowly, carefully avoiding the main patrols while monitoring communications. The human used subtle maneuvers and timing to remain undetected until the last possible moment. The princess felt her pulse quicken as the familiar spires of her homeworld appeared on the view screen. Memories of her childhood flooded her mind. Grand halls, the bustle of court, and the endless expectations placed upon her since birth. Yet these memories were tempered by the realization that she had survived without the support of her empire, without the protection of her mother, relying solely on her courage and the ingenuity of the human beside her. Finally, they arrived at the orbital station that marked the border of the empire. Communication channels were secure, and a direct approach would not only reveal her presence but also the identity of her savior. The human turned to her. "When we go in, speak your truth. Show them who saved you. Let them understand that survival is not about power, but about courage, loyalty, and intelligence." The princess nodded, her resolve hardening. She had learned from the human that survival was measured not by lineage or technology, but by determination, adaptability, and moral courage. She had survived. She had learned. And now she would reveal not only herself, but also the human who had ensured her survival. As they entered the orbital station's vicinity, Imperial sensors detected the ship. Alarms blared in distant command centers. Ships scrambled, energy beams prepared, and protocols initiated for containment. The princess could feel the weight of centuries of tradition and authority pressing down on her. The human, however, remained calm, guiding the ship with steady hands and precise calculations. He did not falter. He did not hesitate. He adapted to every new variable, every shift in strategy, every unexpected threat. At the station's main docking bay, ships and personnel awaited, ready for confrontation. The human maneuvered the vessel expertly, aligning with docking protocols while minimizing exposure to hostile forces. The moment of truth had arrived. The princess took a deep breath, her hand brushing against the console where the ship could broadcast messages. She activated the comm channel, her voice steady and clear. "This is Princess Elenya of the Imperial Throne. I am alive. I have returned with someone who ensured my survival." Silence followed her words, filled only by static and the faint hum of the ship. Then a flurry of activity erupted across the Empire. Commands were shouted, sensors recalculated, and officials rushed to the docking bay. The Queen herself appeared on the communications feed, her eyes wide with shock, grief, and disbelief. For centuries, she had ruled with certainty, her will absolute. And now, confronted with the impossible, the survival of her daughter, she was momentarily powerless. "Mother," the princess continued, "I am alive. This human saved me. Without him, I would not have returned. He demonstrated courage, intelligence, and loyalty that even our greatest fleets cannot match. I owe him my life." The Queen's expression hardened, a storm of conflicting emotions crossing her face. Pride, grief, anger, and astonishment all battled within her. Yet as she studied the transmission, as she observed the calm determination of the human and the survival of her daughter, understanding slowly began to take root. This was not a threat. This was not betrayal. This was the embodiment of qualities that her empire had long underestimated. The human stepped forward, activating the ship's main viewports to reveal himself. He did not bow excessively, nor did he flaunt dominance. He simply stood tall, steady, and unyielding, a living testament to human endurance. The princess had spoken the truth. She had revealed him not as a subordinate, not as a curiosity, but as a hero who had ensured her survival. The Queen's advisors hesitated, unsure how to respond. Protocols demanded caution, suspicion, and containment, yet the Queen, in a moment of clarity, spoke. "Bring them both in," she commanded, her voice cold but resolute. "No harm will come to either." Docking procedures commenced, and the ship landed within the protected bay. Guards approached, but the princess stepped forward, placing a hand on the human's arm. "He saved me," she said firmly. "He deserves respect, not suspicion." The human nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. He had faced threats in the void, creatures that could crush ships, storms that could destroy entire systems. Yet the challenge here, the scrutiny of an empire, the judgment of a queen, was unlike anything he had faced. He remained composed, relying on the same qualities that had carried them through the void: courage, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. Inside the docking bay, the Queen descended, her presence imposing, yet her gaze softened as it fell upon her daughter. The princess stepped forward, meeting her mother's eyes. "I am alive," she said simply. "Thanks to him, I have returned." The Queen studied the human carefully. He did not flinch, he did not bow excessively, he simply stood tall, steady, and honest. The Queen felt a mix of emotions she could not name. Anger and suspicion warred with gratitude and astonishment. She realized in that moment that this human had done what no fleet, no general, no diplomat could have done. He had preserved the life of the princess, her daughter, her heir. "You are remarkable," she said finally, her voice softer than expected. "Not because of rank, not because of lineage, but because of courage, determination, and loyalty. You have saved my daughter. For that you have my respect and the respect of the empire." The princess watched, awe in her eyes, as the Queen extended a hand, not in command but in acknowledgement. The human accepted it with quiet dignity, understanding that true power often came not from titles or authority, but from deeds that transcended expectation. In the days that followed, the human was honored throughout the empire. Stories of his courage and ingenuity spread quickly. Citizens, soldiers, and officials alike marveled at the fact that a human, considered young, inexperienced, and weak by galactic standards, had achieved what countless fleets could not. The princess acted as ambassador, sharing her experiences, the lessons she had learned, and the extraordinary qualities of humanity that had ensured her survival. The Queen, in turn, issued a decree that recognized humanity not as a minor species to be ignored, but as one deserving of respect, protection, and collaboration. Across the galaxy, perceptions shifted. Species that had dismissed humans now watched with caution and admiration. They had seen what humans could endure, what humans could achieve, and how humans could alter destinies through courage, intelligence, and loyalty. The princess continued to speak, emphasizing the qualities that had saved her: perseverance, adaptability, and moral courage. She highlighted the human's refusal to abandon her, his ingenuity in solving impossible problems, and his unyielding determination in the face of overwhelming odds. These lessons resonated deeply with the Empire. For the first time, humans were not seen as weak or primitive, but as a species capable of shaping the galaxy's future. Meanwhile, the human returned to his own people, though he remained in close contact with the princess and the queen. He had proven the truth that the galaxy had long underestimated. That power was not only in fleets or weapons, but in courage, loyalty, and determination. Humanity's value was no longer a question. It was a fact demonstrated by actions, endurance, and moral strength. The princess, strengthened by her ordeal, embraced her role as ambassador and survivor. She worked to reshape the Empire's perception of humanity, emphasizing partnership, respect, and collaboration. She had learned that survival was more than endurance. It was about the choices one made, the loyalty one offered, and the courage to act when all seemed lost. And as the stars stretched endlessly beyond the palace windows, the princess looked at the human who had changed her life, and the galaxy itself, in ways that could never be undone. She understood that the survival of one human had demonstrated a truth far greater than any empire could dictate. That humanity, though underestimated, possessed the courage, intelligence, and loyalty to alter destinies, defy expectations, and endure where others might fail. In that quiet moment, she realized something profound. The galaxy would never again measure humans by appearances, by technology, or by strength alone. They would be measured by the heart, the mind, and the enduring courage to face the impossible. And in that measurement, humanity had triumphed. The queen, watching her daughter safe and alive, and acknowledging the human who had ensured it, understood the transformation occurring before her eyes. Power and lineage mattered, but courage, ingenuity, and loyalty mattered more. The Empire had witnessed the undeniable truth of HFY, that humans, despite every disadvantage, could endure, innovate, and triumph. And in that realization, a new chapter began for the galaxy. One in which humanity was no longer dismissed, no longer underestimated, and no longer overlooked. The princess had returned, the human had proven his worth, and the Empire had learned a lesson that would resonate for generations: the value of courage, loyalty, and the indomitable spirit of humans.